Hello, this is Jimmy Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. First, we have what Bidenomics actually is from International Silver One, and it's a cross post from the Fixed Political Means subreddit. It says Bidenomics noun. Bidenomics is about growing the economy only for the rich, raising record corporate profits while rents and food prices rise and social welfare is slashed. It's an economic vision where we don't care for the needs of workers, actively ignore labor unions, continue to invest heavily in the military-industrial complex, and never follow through on any promise of social or economic justice for marginalized communities. And I said, Bidenomics is stealing from the poor and giving to the rich. In fairness, that's been the default since the Federal Reserve was established. Then we have South Africa institutes proceedings against the State of Israel before the International Court of Justice under the Genocide Convention and requests provisional measures. For International Silver One, that's the cross from the Palestine subreddit. And I personally think that, if they want to do that, they should be able to, but I personally don't think it's going to amount to much, because the U.S. is going to be on Israel's side, and they're one of the groups that can really control the International Court of Justice, I think, because I think that's one of the branches, one of the things the UN does, and the U.S. is really influential in the UN since it's in the Security Council permanently. Then we have nationalized from Chabonet, and that's a Defying Nails post. Rick Wilson tweeted January 20th, 2014, I'm old enough to remember when wanting to nationalize media smacked of the Nazis or the Soviets. And then on November 17, 2022, right after Elon got Twitter, he said, time to nationalize Twitter. And I said, I always love Defiant Nails calling out hypocrisy. Then we have Protecting Extreme Speech, Snyder v. Phelps from Mr. Beat on YouTube, and I posted that, and I said, I think that it was a good decision. The Supreme Court ruled 8-1 that the Westboro Baptist Church could protest at the funerals of deceased military veterans. And I said, if we don't believe in freedom of expression for people we despise, we don't believe in it at all. Noam Chomsky. We need to support free speech and free expression for everyone, even if it can be considered hateful or mean or violent. That's what I think. I don't think we should have stuff like slander, libel, and all that. We should just have, all words should be free speech. Then we have, we're headed to a system where the elites pick our leadership, RFK Jr. from the Epoch Times by Chabonet, and I said, think RFK Jr. is a couple of hundred years late on that one, if not a couple thousand. Because the elites have always really controlled who the leader is. Even if the system is marketed as democratic, the elites are the one who really control the system. If voting, as the old quote goes, if voting matters, they wouldn't let us do it. Then we have front page of today's Orlando Centennial, Bill eyes Confederate memorials to restore and protect them. And that's a cross post from the Iron Front USA subreddit from Tom 13. And I said, I do think we should try and preserve as much history as possible, but I think that can be hard for some people in regards to Confederate memorials. Ultimately, it comes down to who has the force and authority to do what, just like it would to do. Who has the force and authority to do what, just like everything else. And they said, and Tom 13 replied, make museums and shove them in there. I said that would be a fair compromise. I don't think we should be destroying cultural heritage no matter how bad it is. I'd say the same thing if these were Nazi or Soviet monuments. Then we have, what's it like when your town is attacked by a killdozer from Tom 13. That's a post from crack.com. And I personally think, the killdozer was kind of violent, but I do think, he was screwed over by the government, and he did only go after government buildings, so I think, in some ways, that's kind of standing up for yourself as well. I personally don't think you should destroy people's property without their consent, but, I think he did, what's his name, I think, what was his name? Herkermeyer or Hedemeyer? Something Meyer, I think. Marvin Heemeyer. I think, in a lot of ways, Marvin Heemeyer said, I forget, he had a good quote, about reasonable. Yeah, I liked his quote. I was always willing to be reasonable until I had to be unreasonable. Sometimes reasonable men must do unreasonable things. I think that's important to note as well, Sometimes, when you break someone hard enough, they can justify violating the NAP. And, and I think in Heemeyer's case, it was one of the more justified NAP violations, I would say. And that's something that I think is important. Because, he didn't kill anyone, and he only went after government property after the government screwed him over. Then we have election deniers from Charbonnet, and that's a Defiant L's post. I think I went over in the last podcast. President Joe Biden's USA Today Politics on January 20th, 2022. President Joe Biden said Wednesday's 2022 midterm elections could easily be illegitimate if Congress does not pass voting rights legislation. But then on November 2nd, 2022, Biden will address the Federal election hours to beat 7 p.m. Wednesday from Washington's Union Station. And I said, the elections are only legitimate when my party wins. That's the average duopoly member. Then we have Milei brings his chainsaw to Argentina's regulatory state from Reason.com by Charbonnet. And I think that's good and very libertarian. We shouldn't have any regulations at all if the people don't want to have them. That's my thoughts on that issue. As long as no one's getting hurt, Sometimes people might get hurt, and that's just how things go. But, if the people don't want to have them, they shouldn't be forced to have them, As long as no one's really getting hurt too bad, I would say. So then we have California becomes first state to offer health insurance to all undocumented immigrants. About 700,000 adults between ages 26 and 49 will be eligible as of January 1st from abcnews.go.com by Charbonnet. And I said, what did I say? I think I said that. I said, I'm pretty pro-immigrant, but I think this is a little bit far. The state shouldn't be using taxpayer money to fund healthcare, especially if people don't want their taxpayer money going to that. And illegal immigrants who live off the grid are probably not paying taxes. So that's something that's important to remember as well. Then we have This Isn't Funny from Charbonnet, and that's Never Define L's post from Anna V. Escamani on August 1st, 2018. She said, rigged witch hunt. The only thing rigged in this was the 2016 presidential election. Hashtag safety, hashtag Florida poll. And then on September 6, 2022, she tweeted, more than 1 in 2 Americans will have an election denier on the ballot this fall. This isn't funny, it's dangerous. And I said, the elections are only legitimate when my party wins, average duopoly member. So that's always important to note. Then we have New Hampshire bill would authorize kangaroo and caribou farming for human consumption, and that's a cross post from the New Hampshire subreddit from sfreeamazonalls.com. And I said, I think that the libertarian perspective is that you should be able to farm and eat whatever animals you want to, sans humans when they don't consent to it. It shouldn't be up to the decision of the state. And then Clorox by moving to Hampshire start Donner Party Farm fresh meats. And I said, I think the libertarian perspective on cannibalism is that's okay as long as it's consensual. What RMMU did was something I personally find disgusting, but it did appear to be consensual, and I don't want victimless crimes being charged. The willing dads, they took advantage of a mentally ill person and ate him. And I said mental illness is something that I think can be in the eye of the beholder a lot of the time. Just because you have mental illness doesn't mean that you can deny people their ability to consent if they're of age. That's logic that leads to stuff like this. And I linked to a story from the AP News about how transgender adults are getting denied gender affirming care in Missouri because they've been diagnosed with autism, and they think that the state's labeled that mental illness and has used that to take away their ability to get the medications they want. And I think that's, I personally am not into gender affirming care or cannibalism. But I think if people, even if they want to have mental illness and do them, I think they should be able to do them. That's what I think. Then we have Google settles $5 billion privacy lawsuit over tracking people using incognito mode. WTOP News from WTOP.com by Chabonet, and I said, if you use Google Proxy, they probably know everything you do. Unironically typed on a Chrome browser by a guy who owns a Google Pixel phone. That's what I'm recording this on right now. And, yeah, I personally don't trust Google for all my data, but, they have a lot of power, and, that's just ultimately, if I want to use their products, I should be able to, but I do have to be aware of the consequences of that as well. Probably a lot of other corporations have my data as well, and that's something that's also important to remember. Then we have Donald Trump Jr., and the government also has my data as well. Now thinking of that, probably a lot of foreign governments as well. Your data is probably like in everywhere if you think about it. So that's just something that I don't think that's libertarian, but the people just try to justify. And if you put your data out in the open, they'll get it, and that's not something that I think is. Even if you don't put it on the open, they'll probably get it, and that's just how sometimes you have to roll with the punches like that. Then we have Donald Trump Jr. wants to see Alex Jones in Favre's White House from Newsweek.com. And I said, I'd rather see it the other way around personally. That's from Cry by the way. I'd rather see it the other way around personally. President Alex Jones would be hilarious when it comes to raw meme potential. It'd be funny if he was president and his Gettysburg Address style speech is all about gay frogs. I think that would be funny. Then we have Trump doesn't have immunity from January 6th civil suit brought by U.S. Capitol Police officers, appeals court says, from CBSNews.com by Clorox. And I said, that's crossed from the Lawrence Law subreddit. And I personally think, I don't know if he should have immunity, but I think none of them should have immunity, but the other presidents always seem to have immunity from all their lawsuits, so I think that's something that's important to remember as well. Then we have people don't get it from Caldwell Curmudgeon. And it's the meme from that guy from The Office. He's pointing to the board. He says, if the state is a corrupt gang of thieves that ruins the free market, then that logic should be applied to socialism too. And I said, if socialism is done voluntarily and consensually among those involved, I think it's okay. But a lot of people want to enforce it through the state, and I personally don't think that's libertarian. Then we have Lindsey Graham hit Iran, blow it off the map, and that's a tweet from Disclosed TV. And I said relevant and linked to a meme from Twitter they had recently about how it was from Family Guy, and it was Peter Griffin saying, and then there was Peace on Earth, and all the kids are screaming when they say Lindsey Graham, Ray Fion Technologies, Nikki Haley, and Northrop Grumman. He's just one of the neos in the GOP who just wants to be an endless war. And I think Trump in a lot of ways is like that as well, even if his rhetoric is different. He'll just, if he gets elected, he'll probably just do like last time and stuff his cabinet with neocons straight from the RNC, and just keep doing keep us all in our endless wars, even if he markets himself as doing otherwise. Then we have the New Hampshire party is deeply unserious and ran by seriously mental unwell people. A cross post from the Libertarian Party USA served by Baton 13, and that's a tweet from LPNH about their comparison between Lincoln and Bin Laden. I talked about that in the last episode, so I'm not going to really go into detail of it, but yeah, I personally think, that Abraham Lincoln wasn't a hero, and a lot of the authoritarianism we see from the U.S. government today can be traced back to his administration, and that's always something that's important to remember. Then we have Congress, not the White House, is the legislative body of the United States. The Biden administration's abuse of emergency authority to sell weapons to Israel or any foreign country is unrepresentative, irresponsible, and unethical, from Justin Amash on Twitter, and that was his reply to a tweet about how from the Associated Press tweet, the Biden administration once more bypasses Congress and emergency weapons sale to Israel. And I said, just goes to show that the government wants something badly enough, they'll find a way to get it done regardless of what the actual legal route is. The actual legal route is kind of irrelevant. People, if they want something badly enough, will just find a way to get it, regardless of whatever the actual law says. Then we have, if Trump gets reelected, do you expect his next administration to be more right-wing than last time, or more of the same? From Michael Malice on Twitter, and I posted that, and right now it's 35.4% more right-wing, 54.6% more about the same, 10% more left-wing. And I said, voted for about the same. That seems to be the MO for the U.S. government. It's irrelevant who the president is. It's always about the same. Barack Obama's marketing is bringing hope and change, but he ended up being 2 more terms of George W. Bush. And then Trump says, I'm going to shape things up, and he's just another term of Barack Obama. So, they never really change. They're always about the same. It's all just really theater, I think. Then we have Tever reveals partnerships with Secret Service, FBI, and letter to U.S. Senate from FinanceIO.com by Frosty Slawman. And I definitely do think, that private businesses shouldn't be forced to work with the government. But if they want to, I think if they want to do that, they should be able to. But personally, I don't trust private businesses that work with the government. The more company works with the government, the less I trust them, frankly. Then we have whistleblower docs expose key tactics of the censorship industrial complex from theepochtimes.com by Chabonet. And I agree, that's like how the government is influencing stuff like Twitter and Facebook to remove what they deem to be hate speech misinformation. And I don't think that's libertarian, especially if they're forced to do so, which in a lot of cases they might be, it seems, increasingly, especially how the government says, Twitter has to report on monthly content moderation or else risk getting fined from the government. I think that's not libertarian. The government shouldn't be forcing its things on private business. Then we have correct. These things are not free and never have been, from Brad Palumbo on Twitter, and I posted that, and that was his quote-unquote tweeting it true, said, libraries are never really free, fire departments are never really free, public schools are never really free, we don't have to continue to force our friends, family, and neighbors in debt because they get sick, we can man better and have better. And that was her quote tweeting Ed Krasenstein, who says healthcare is never really free, and yeah. And I said, nothing is that requires labor of others is free, no matter how much you say it is or want it to be. Then we have, maybe after the first woman boxer dies in the ring as a result of having her head pummeled by a man, they'll stop this horror and charade, from Rob Schneider on Twitter. And I posted that, and that was him quote tweeting the Daily Mail online. USA Boxing to allow transgender women to compete against female boxers under certain conditions from 2024 after introducing new policy. And I said, I don't think so. The progressives will just say that sports deaths has happened historically as well. They'll just say, they'll justify what they justify. The progressive agenda is what matters most to them, and they'll always find a way to justify it as long as they are not themselves physically harmed, I think. And let's see if we have anything new. I think that's going to be it. I'll see you guys next episode. Bye.